All right, got it. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Thought Leader Thursday for June. We are so happy to see you here. Thank you very much for taking time out to be here. We have a lovely, lovely guest, and I know you're all anxious to hear from him. It's just going to be marvelous. I'm not gonna say anything ahead of time. We also have a possibility of having a surprise guest drop in, so we'll look to see if that happens as well, and give him or her some space to do what they're going to be doing when they get here. So we have that to look forward to. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and ask for someone to pray in, and I'm going to pick someone, which would be Kim. I see you're on here, Kim, and I'm going to ask you to pray in for us this morning.
Absolutely, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Let's all take a deep breath together. Mother, Father, God, we are deeply grateful for this time together, for all the beloved souls who have made time in their busy lives to share insight, to hold space for each other, to learn and to grow, and to step more fully into who we are, unique expressions of the divine. And so we open hearts and minds now for all the wisdom that will be offered. And we will take the fruit that will help us to step more fully into who we are from this moment into the world. For we are called to be the peacemakers, to spread love, to be love, and to be harmony and unity in the world. And for this we say, amen, and so it is.
Amen, and so it is. Thank you. Whew. All right. I do want to remind everyone that we encourage questions and comments throughout. So if you have a question for our speaker or a comment that you would like to make, some clarification, please raise your hand, and myself and our administrator, Bill, will be watching and monitoring and letting us know that someone has a question or a comment. So thank you so much for being here once again. And let me go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is Reverend Dr. Brock Ford. Brock earned his Master's of Interfaith Religious Studies and his doctorate in Religious Studies from the Emerson Institute of Theology. He is an ordained interfaith minister, a certified practitioner in religious science, and he received his humane certificate as an animal chaplain and is currently an affiliate of Emerson's New Thought Center Church Without Walls. He travels the San Francisco Bay Area, assuring people of all races, denominations, and orientations that they are deserving and capable of love and happiness. His passion is helping families learn to heal and learn alternative ways of communicating and being with one another. He now has the joy of following his passion to help families heal and learn. His motto, and I love this, Brock, his motto is love, compassion, tolerance, and forgiveness, leading to understanding. So his topic today is diversity and new thought principles. So I'm going to go ahead and not talk more about that and let you talk on into that, but that is a fabulous topic, and I love the fact that you have looked at it as a gateway to have some difficult conversations with the LGBTQIA plus community. So go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and let you start and share your thoughts and however you want to go. I've got some questions for you, should you not answer all the questions that are on my mind, and if we have time to get to it.
Well, I'll try to answer everything that you ask. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And Pjae and Bill, thank you so much for asking me. It's a delight to be here, and I love each and every one of you. But talking about some of the things that I hope that we talk about today is the diversity that you brought up, and then my ministry and how it sort of got started, and what I'm doing out there in the world of the unhoused is just as equally as important to me as the diversity that I'm doing. But my ministry's purpose is called Brock Ford Life Ministry, and the purpose is to be a support to the disenfranchised and the struggling and the hurting, and people who wouldn't necessarily actually step into a church. Right. And to help families heal and learn alternative ways, which you said that for me, thank you, of being together when they believe that there's some kind of differences, you know, LGBT is different for some people in their families, or growing up in the South in Memphis, being different was a white person married a Black person, or a Hispanic person, things of that nature. Differences came around. So my passion is to help people learn alternative ways of being together, and that the ethical and spiritual aspects of New Thought is my way of teaching them how to do it. And that when we look to ethical principles and spiritual principles, we can see that we are all one with God. And when we talk about that, when I talk about that in my counseling or in my workshops and seminars, you see people's eyes sort of light up. It's like they've never heard that they're one with God, and that everyone is a part of this humanity here. So that's what I strive to do, and that's what I've been doing. And I developed some workshops because I was actually guest speaking at Unity of Vacaville, just up the road, and they have some LGBTQ youth in their congregation. And Reverend Dahlia came to me and she said, help me, because I'm going to have people leave if we don't support them with the program. So that's what started this, actually. And of course, it really started many years ago, which we'll get into, but that's how this came about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just talk to me about, you say that you get together and you talk with them about alternative ways of being together. Talk to us about what that looks like. What does that mean?
Well, the most important thing that I try to do when I go into coaching a family in person or on Zoom sometimes is that, first of all, we're setting a safe space here. Everyone has respect for the others. And I talk about seeking to understand, asking questions. When I was younger and I came out, no one asked me any questions.
Okay.
No one asked me, what's this about? Or how did this happen? Or we don't understand, tell us more. And so I don't want to get into that story at this moment, but when that happened, it became a way for me to help others understand how that they can navigate this path of and building a bridge, so to speak, to their families. So how do we sit down? Mom and dad are upset. My child is different, they're calling it. And whatever that difference is, how can we have a conversation built on love, around respect? And then what I do is I say, what are the questions that you're seeking to understand about your child or your loved one, things of that nature? And I bring in spiritual and ethical principles, because spiritual living and ethical living to me is like parent and child. They're linked, they're connected. And so spiritual living is actually a deeply personal search for the expression of God. And it speaks to us internally in our heart and in our head and in our soul. And then ethical living is the external expression of spiritual awareness, and it's how we project ourselves out into the world. Okay. So when people hear that for the first time, or maybe to be reminded, they go, wow, and what can we do with our hands and our feet? And how are we behaving and acting in the world? And then some people say, well, I'm not spiritual and I'm not ethical either. So then how do we come to a point of, how do we have this conversation with the family to help you understand? So that's where we start. And, and a lot of times, y'all, parents are confused. They don't know what's going on. They weren't necessarily brought up in that world. And, some of them think it's a sin, and that's where all this stuff comes from. And then some of them think that it's against the law, and they have fear for their kids growing up that way. And so that's the diversity part of my ministry and how I go about it. And then I have a homeless, or we call them unhoused these days, ministry. And I go out 2 or 3 times a week as well. And y'all, let me just tell you something. One of the best and most wonderful blessings that I get is when I see a face light up. Because I tell the unhoused when I'm out there, because I sit with them and I pray with them and I hug them and I listen to them. Tell me your stories. How did you end up here? And what was the path? And what's the path where you want to go? But when I tell them that, y'all, you can get out of this if you want to, because it's right here and it's right here in our hearts.
Yeah.
So if we believe in a higher power at all, or if we believe within ourselves that we have the ability, then all we have to do is change the way we're speaking our I ams. And y'all, I have an I am sermon. I love to preach it, but I am, what are you putting those words to? And so they're putting them to, I need a fix. I need housing. I need a place to stay. I need food, things of that nature. So they're in that survival mode.
Right.
And I'm trying to get them to shift a little bit. And when their eyes light up and they see that God loves them because they've been told that people don't love them,
Yeah.
they make that shift, Pjae, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying that you're pretty much leading with love. The first thing you're doing is just kind of coming in there and just saying, I love you.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on.
I want to be that love and that support for them.
Yeah.
And they've become my people, so to speak. And I've got a group of gay unhoused people that I work with. And it's a huge blessing for me to see that them turn around and or at least take some steps towards healing themselves so that they can start a new life for themselves.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I have a hand up there. Terry Berger, you have a question, Terry? Are you there, Terry? Terry Berger? Nope. Okay, we'll come back to you. You say that you did you leave? You say that you do workshops and things. So tell us about what is your objectives when you start a workshop? What is it that you want to try to accomplish? How do you set it up? And so essentially, it's like if we wanted to start utilizing some of these ideas that you're talking about, what would be some first steps, some second steps? Essentially, how do you do your workshop? You know what I mean?
Sure. It's usually I've written my workshops. I have 2 at the moment. The first one is the language and understanding. It's LGBTQIA workshops, and then the language and understanding of diversity. And so that one came about because of the Unity Vacaville Church asked me to help them. And so that's sort of how that part got started. Before that, I was just doing everything on my own, just trying to reach out to people and help them. But it came about that Unity Vacaville wanted me to do that. And so I gave them, the first one was, what was the terminology? Because people don't know what trans is. There's bisexual, there's all of these different terms, asexual, So at any rate, what I basically did was I just formulated sort of a scholarly type lecture of sorts of terminology and history going way back to 1600s. And I did a lot of research to find all that information. And then I wrote from my heart, and from my experience as well. And so that first one is just about helping people know what the terms mean when they're hearing that out in the world. What does trans mean? What does it mean? I have a trans daughter or I have a trans son, And then what does gay mean? What does bisexual mean? Because a lot of older people showed up at these, older than me, I'm 61, but there was a huge diversity of people at these workshops, people that have children and grandchildren that are seeking to know more, to help them and to understand. And then I had gay people that were hurting, that showed up to try to get some respite, to get some peace and see what this man was going to help them with. Okay. And so it ranged from people like 16 years old to 90 years old. Wow. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I think that would be very helpful if you have a link or a website where we could possibly read some of that information, because that's certainly something that I would say many of us don't quite know exactly what the terms mean, or don't want to be offensive. And so what ends up happening is I get fearful about how to speak to someone, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I don't exactly know how to approach. So that would be very helpful, I think, Brock.
Well, I'll send you those links as well. And anybody else that wants them, put it into the chat and I'll be glad to do that. My second one, I'm actually in the midst of writing my second one now, and it's called Navigating the Path of Diversity and Religion. And this one I'm really excited about because this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long, long, long time. And we'll get into that a little bit, but it's exploring what the Bible verses are, and to be respectful of people, and not to bash anyone, but I'm trying to help people in this particular one understand when people are coming at them with these Bible verses that you're a sinner, that you're a homosexual, that you're an abomination, you're worthy of death, and all these things that come out of people's mouths and online and everywhere else. I'm trying to equip, so to speak, families of LGBT people and LGBT people themselves, not to fight or to get into craziness or chaos with people, but to lovingly have conversations seeking to understand and giving them the tools that they know the verses that's coming at them, because this way I'm teaching them what to say back to that.
Right.
And we meet it with love. We meet it with Jesus Christ said to love everyone, no exceptions. We are all one. Right. And some people get it and some people don't. But the most important thing is, if you can't get the spiritual part of it, so if someone's not spirituality oriented, I guess, then maybe the ethics will help them, because do you really want to do harm to people? Right. Do you really want to not allow them to live their life in a happy way? What's it to you? Those kinds of things. So I teach those spiritual and ethical principles because they're linked together, and they teach us how to have humility and empathy and compassion. So whether you're spiritual or not, you can have ethics. And you can allow the person next door to be who they are and live the way they live, right, without getting a gun and going over and shooting them or something,
Right.
So
that solves everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we're living ethically, we're actually being an example to the world, because we're putting that energy out there with our actions, our hands, our words, our feet, despite whatever differences we may share. And y'all, that particular belief that we are all one, I get excited because it changes everything. When they light up and say, wow, I really am one, I'm getting that. It builds that bridge, and it builds the bridge for people to sort of shut up a little bit with their craziness and then get into a place of seeking to understand and asking questions.
Right. So. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about you coming on and doing your being the speaker here today, you talked about the difficult conversations with the parents of the LGBT. I'm not going to say the whole thing, with the gay community.
Gay is fine to say, sweetheart.
Yeah, thank you. So talk to us about what are some of the difficult conversations that the parents have. What's difficult for them?
A lot of parents are scared and afraid, like I said a few minutes ago, and they don't know what to ask. And they're afraid they're going to ask the wrong questions, or they're going to come across as not being supportive, things of that nature. So one particular lady who was 82 years old came up to me after the workshop, the first workshop, and she said, can you help me speak to my son who has a trans daughter? So her granddaughter is trans. And I'm like, okay, well, what? And at first I'm like, okay, what conversation do you want to have?
Right.
And so what she said was, and she started crying, and it really touched my heart. She said that she wants to be able to sit down with her son that she raised to be a Christian and help him back off of some of the anger that he has and the disappointment that he has, that his child is now a girl and not a boy. Okay. And so when she said that to me, I'm like, thank you. You're just continuing everything in my mind that I'm wanting to do out there. So they were the impetus that's helped me get this going. But she said, can you help me with some scriptures? Because he's telling his daughter, this is against the Bible. It says it right here, says it right here. It says this over here. In this chapter, it says this. She says, can you help us learn what those scriptures are that they're going to come at us with, so that we have something to not come back in a mean way, but to have conversation,
right,
and to seek to understand. And when we seek to understand, y'all, there's peace there. Right. There's levity there. There's a place of openness there. And so grab that and then lovingly start asking questions, whatever that is. You know, how did this come about? When did you notice this? You know, we didn't see this happening. How do you feel? What's this like for you? What's this like for you?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. It really
Yeah.
does. And what, what would you like for this community right here? What would you like us to know or to understand, to be able to do from this conversation that you're having? What would you wish? What would be your highest wish for this New Thought community to know and to be out there in the world working with diversity in this way?
Keep spreading the message that New Thought has, that we are all one, that we are all worthy, that we are loved, that we are God expressing. We are the hands and feet and the mouths and the personalities of God out in the world. So with that, be an ally. You know, if you don't have gay people in your family that you can support and help or encourage, or especially those of us on here today who are involved in a spiritual life, be that person. Be present, y'all. I know that Dr. Reverend Sherry's on here. I can see her face there. Hi, sweetheart. And she and Missy they both talk about presence a lot. And they've taught me a lot about presence, both of those ladies. And so sometimes it's just being present and reach over and hold someone's hand. Just hold this space for them. And you don't have to say anything. And in that silence, the words will arrive. They will come out of the person seeking, the gay person seeking to be accepted, understood, and loved and encouraged. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Thank you. Sherry, I see that your hand has been up a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Brock, because I think a day is wasted when I haven't learned something, and you just threw away a line that I grabbed with both hands and will use for the rest of my life. You said the differences that we share.
The differences that we what?
The differences that we share.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a, well, I've got double-decker God bumps. That is such a big step into oneness, to recognize that nobody is different by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's true. Thank you, Sherry. That's wonderful. My purpose is just learning ways to be together. And, growing up, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I came out at the age of, two things happened. May I share something with you, Pjae, and everyone?
You're the speaker, baby, please. Share
Okay. Let me tell you how all of this came about and evolved, going way back, because it's really important for me to have people understand where this came from. And then secondly, it helps them to have a better understanding of who I am and why I'm doing this. But when I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in a Southern Baptist family, my grandpa was the preacher. My mama played the organ. My aunt played the piano. And we lived here. My grandparents lived here and my aunt lived here. We were all in the same 3-house row. And I was about 5 years old. I hadn't started school yet, I don't believe, but I was between 5 and 7. I get those numbers mixed up, but at any rate, somewhere around 5 or 7, I saw the first Black family moving into the neighborhood. And so I saw this U-Haul pull up, and it was about 4 houses down. And the kids were out playing, and the mom and daddy were moving stuff out of the U-Haul. And so I went inside and I got my truck. And I was going to go down and meet the little boy, because there's a little boy and a little girl about my age. And so I got my truck and I'm just walking down the street. I was going, and my grandpa comes out of his house because I'm passing his house. And he says, "Where are you going, boy?" And I said, "I'm going to go play with that little boy that's moving in." He says, "No, you're not. Get over here." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to go play with the little boy." And so he came and got me, took me back in. And he said this. He says, "Don't ever go down there again. We don't play with those people." And I immediately felt it in my heart and in my soul that wasn't right. I was 5 years old. And the man that was up preaching to me my whole life and preaching love in church just told me that someone was different, and that's not good. And so I asked him, I'm like, "I don't understand. I'm going to go play." He said, "No." And so he took me back in. he went out in the backyard. Well, y'all, I left and went anyway again. And I did lie a little bit. The mama probably knew what was happening. And she says, the little boy's mama said, does your mama know you're here? And I said, oh, yeah, she knows. But they didn't. And about 10 minutes later, I felt my grandpa grab me on the back and drag me home. And then he gave me a whooping. So the second thing that happened, that was where I wanted everyone to know that I don't care what color you are. I'm little Bubba Ford, that's what they used to call me. I want to play with everybody. So at any rate, that happened. And then I also knew growing up over the years, especially when I became a teenager and in high school, that my family believed that homosexuals were an abomination and worthy of death. I mean, they would say that. And I knew to be quiet, because even as young as second or third grade, I sort of knew that I kept looking at these little boys that were cute or something. And I didn't understand it all, but I just knew that I kept looking. And so at the age of 22, my grandmother asked me, and I said yes. And all hell broke loose after that. And I was told that they would rather me be dead, and that they would kill me if I didn't leave town. And I was assaulted by the two main men in my family. And I was told to leave or they would kill me. And my mom came to take me out of the hospital after that. And it was about 3 days later. And she said, baby, you got to go. They're going to kill you. And I believed my mama. So I fled, and I went to Dallas, Texas, and lived there for 8 years and started a new life, started a new family. And I knew when I was driving that car to Texas, I was crying all the way, because I just lost everything I'd ever known. And I realized I'm on my own now. Let's go start this life. What are we going to do? And I was scared, y'all. But there were two gentlemen that helped me. Go ahead, Pjae.
No, I just said, of course you were scared. Your whole family, everything was gone that you knew.
But I knew a guy at Unity that was in the choir, because my mom was a Unity minister. And she said to call him.
Did you say your mom was a Unity minister? You kind of let that slide in.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
Long time ago. And she said, call David. She was the only gay person that she knew. And I did. And he ended up saying, let's go to Dallas for the weekend and have a good time and forget about all this. And he had a plan. We ended up there, two wonderful gentlemen, much older than me. And we all went out that night. The next day, David had left. I got up and he was gone. I'm like, where's my friend? And they said he left to go back to Memphis, and here's a note. And he left $500 in an envelope and told me never go back. And these men will help you. And they did. And they became my family. And I went to the paper the next day and got a job at the Dallas Morning News. And I'm out here in San Francisco now, and life has been tremendous. I've had a wonderful life. And it was hard at first, not having my family and not being able to go back and see them. But I made a new family. And quite frankly, over the years, this family right here, it means so much to me. All these faces on this Zoom today. So all of y'all are my family. So thank you. But I've lived a triumphant life. And y'all, it was through that, knowing that Black people were put apart, Hispanic people are put on, gay people are put on. What can I do to help change that and make people evolve? Or I used the word make back then, but help people evolve to where maybe they could live next door to someone that's different than them and not shoot them or call the police on them or hurt them or cause them not to have a happy life. How can I help people do that? So it became my mission a long, long time ago. And it became formal after I met Martha Creek, and she lovingly helped change my life completely and introduced me to Emerson and Anton, and y'all know the rest. So,
yeah.
But that's how it all got started.
Absolutely. And this is how we get to love and to be out in the world, to take our own hurts and reverse it if we want. Just take I mean, because everybody has a story. There's just no question. Everybody has a story. And so this is one of the things that I think is great about New Thought, is you take your story and what do you want to do with it? How do you make it shine in the world?
Yeah.
And help other people with that. So I just so appreciate what you're doing here. And I understand that that's powered your passion. You again, when we were talking about having these difficult conversations, you talked about an identity crisis. Are you saying with the gay community themselves, or with their parents, or who's having the identity crisis that you speak of?
Well,
What's that like?
I think it's both of those. It's that whole group really, because I think the children are going through an identity crisis. Like some of them as young as 4 or 5, 6 years old, and these teenagers are just amazing to me, because here I am 61 and I've been trying to do something, for the last 38, 40 years, but they're really truly making a difference, and they're so smart these days, and they're teaching me. But what was your question? Here I go.
Yeah.
I'm getting off.
You just spoke about the identity crisis, and I was asking about what that meant.
Yes,
you said on both sides, but who's having the identity crisis?
So it's the parents, the grandparents, the family, and the child, or the person. It could be an adult as well, not just children, that is a gay in the family. Okay. And so the identity crisis comes when you no longer are being. Well, the identity crisis starts so young, y'all. I knew in 2nd grade something was different about me. So it can start very early, that children start learning that they're not like all the other kids in school.
Right.
Or they're not like my cousins, because those are the first friends we have usually.
That's right.
And so I'm not like my cousins. So we learn instinctively to be quiet. We learn to shut down and hide and put this, an armor around us. And because of the words and phrases and the behaviors of people around us, that we see them treating other people that are like us, right. And they don't know we're that yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So we have that crisis, and it plummets us to helping us to learn to understand ourselves, ask ourselves questions. I said it's good to ask people questions. We have to ask ourselves questions too. What am I seeking with this new life? What am I seeking to do? And how do I want to engage with my family, school, things of that nature? Right. That's the identity crisis.
No, and that's fantastic, and I think you're exactly right that all of us, whether you're talking about the gay community or any other community or any other group, as you're going through life, we all have transitions and changes, and we're having to ask ourselves the hard questions: Who am I now? Mm-hmm. Who am I now? Mm-hmm. Who do I want to be now? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what we in New Thought think or talk about, and part of the principles is we get to co-create our lives. Well, how do we do that if we haven't identified what life it is we want to live? Mm-hmm. And then go from there. So this is a great process that you're talking about.
The goal of it all is really to just have these conversations like we're having today. Right. It's just as simple as what we're doing here, and to regain connection and start a dialogue of understanding, and the response has been great, really. It's just one family at a time. Right. I haven't done a big, huge thing. We had about 65 people at our first workshop, which was the language and the understanding. There was a huge write-up in the paper. Actually, they gave me a full-page write-up in the paper. I couldn't believe it. But people showed up. We had about 65 people, and we're doing the next one in August 5th.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I had some thought in my head. What was it? Mm-hmm. It's come and gone. Yeah, that's what it was. So, you talk about having difficult conversations, and I think all of us, and I certainly in this past week have had to have some difficult conversations in my family, just when things erupt. So what is your process what do you think, what can you share with how do you begin to have difficult conversations? Part of the issue that I faced, and I think many of us do, is even owning that there's a problem, whether or not, and the fear that someone is not going to be receptive to having a conversation with you. So what are your thoughts about how you actually have difficult conversations, even in or out of the gay community? How would you have a difficult conversation or begin that process?
Well, first, the ultimate goal is to have healing with the family. And so that is the goal, to regain that connection and understanding and embracing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so the way that we do that is we sit down, we developed that safe space I talked about, and I set the rules. You know, I'm the boss when we're there, okay? And so I am. And so I basically set the space because I'm holding, you know, presence for them during this time. And I start it before I even get there. And I do it 5 minutes before I get into their house or wherever we are. And I let them know that this is a safe space. There's nothing wrong that you could say. Everyone can say whatever's on their heart and whatever they feel, but there will be no cursing, you know. And
that leaves me out, but go ahead.
well, I'm sorry, you can't come then. And then there's no disparaging words. There's no you have to, you must, because I have a list and I say it to them, and that we open this space in love. We open because you're concerned about your family member, and your family member hasn't been able to adequately help you understand what's going on with them. So today, we're all about pulling all the doors off, all the blinders off, pulling the heart way, way, way up into our chest so that we breathe. And then I start out with a treatment with them, and they don't even know what it is, but I start out with a treatment. And I don't get real religious or anything. I try to stay very neutral, but they do know that I use spiritual and ethical practices to help them. And then we start out with the person, the gay person. What is one thing you want your family to know?
Mhm.
And we start out like that. And I start asking questions. And then it evolves because as they talk, we veer it towards that. And then I watch their faces and I watch how they get uncomfortable and they're moving around and they're shifting and all these things. And I know the feeling in the room, it's palpable, you can feel it. And so when things get a little tense, I say, okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's just stop for a minute. Let's get up and shake our legs and shake our hands and move around a bit. And for a brief moment, can you look at that person in the eyes? Let's all look at each other. Can we look and see that that person is human? The person has feelings. The person wants to be loved. The person has some difficulty in dealing with the people that are here. And today we want that difficulty to go out the window and ease that up a little bit so that conversation can start and healing can start. And I just go, and y'all, I can't tell you everything I say because it just sort of happens on the spot.
Sure.
But that's how it sort of works.
Yeah, it just sounds like a great way for pretty much any conversation to get started, and definitely difficult conversations.
You know, I learned, that's what, remember Martha Creek teaches those critical conversations. You know, I first learned it from her.
Okay.
So, you know, I utilize a lot of those principles and practices that she taught us.
Okay. What questions do any of you have right now? I'm asking questions and he's talking, but what thoughts do you have? I'm sure that many of you either have gay members of your family or friends or in your community or whatever. So what questions do you have that you want to ask Brock, or that you just want to speak about, comment? Yes.
Douglas has a question.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you so much, Brock. I truly appreciate all that you've said and what you're doing. It is so well needed. We've moved into a different time now, and I am really concerned about Florida. I don't even understand why people live there now. But the point is, there is this legislation that is going from Florida and around to other states that is not supportive of trans gay life. And that's a separation. Are you receiving questions from the youth that you're working with now? And how are you addressing that issue and those questions with them? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks for bringing that up. That's part of what the second workshop is going to address is, we'll just say it. I'll say it. I'm sorry. Evangelicals that are going against the community and things of that nature. And not all evangelicals, but if they were like my family, they were. So how Girl, I lost my thought again. What was the main point of that? Girl,
How
how,
are you addressing the
Ah.
issue when it comes up from the youth that you're working with? And I guess what I'm looking for is what is that touch point or pivotal point that helps maintain hope and stability, that they're loved, they're cared for, and it's okay for them to be who they are.
yes, that is the goal. That is the ultimate healing is the goal. And so the pivotal point really is the parents have never really listened to the child, so to speak, or the person. And the child has been afraid to speak. So just having this conversation with the moderator or whatever you want to call me, sitting there, opens the door for people to be honest.
Okay.
And it opens the door for them to say the things that they would not know how to say or want to say without a mediator, so to speak. And so the most important thing is that the child gets to say how they're feeling within the family unit and whether they feel supported or not, and what they need from the people there to be supported, to feel loved, to feel embraced, to feel a part of. And so when we address the hate that's coming at us from other people, if we have knowledge of where that came from, or utilizing Bible scriptures, if we look them up ourselves so that we can do translations and look back at the Hebrew and Aramaic to Latin to English translations, there's all kinds of things out there that tell us that that's not necessarily true or what was meant. So when we have that conversation and the child says, Mama, I just want you to love me. Don't hate me, and don't take the Bible and hit me over the head with it every day. That actually happened in one of the conversations I had. And I just about started crying. And the mother, she just tensed up like this. And she was just ready to fight. And I just reached over and I put my hand on her arm. I said, take a breath. That's your child. Do you recognize that person? Do you love that person? Do you want that person to live a healthy, productive life, utilizing their unique gift that no one else has, Mama? And y'all, I talk to him like that. And the mama starts crying. She starts softening. The barriers start to break away. And within 15 minutes, she jumps up and goes over and hugs her baby and bawls and says, I'm so sorry I didn't support you. I'm so sorry I didn't understand. So it's bringing about understanding and voicing your opinion, voicing what's in your heart, that each family member going around and doing it in a circle. And if it gets crazy, I stop it and we take a deep breath. But usually, y'all, when I approach it with a spiritual and ethical aspect, that everyone is deserving of good. Everyone is deserving of God. Everyone is deserving of the life they want to lead in this world.
Oh, I thank you so much for that response, because it sounds like you have another workshop that's specifically for parents to have that amazing, crucial conversation.
That's the next one coming up. And it's really about
Thank you.
the Bible. Yes. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Missy said, approaching it with presence, being, and love. Yes. Thank you, Missy.
Michelle, you have something that you'd like to share?
Boy, I'm just so moved. I'm going to get all teary, Brock. The political world right now is scary, and my gosh, so many things happening. Just the Supreme Court came out today. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What does matter? But what matters here is what you're doing, Brock, which is one person, one family at a time. Because we can't do anything about what the Supreme Court decides. We can't do anything about what the legislation in Florida and other states decide. but we can, and you are, and we can all make a difference, one family, one person at a time. And that's what you're doing, Brock. And kudos. Yeah, kudos. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, sweetheart. You know, I coined a phrase. I don't know if somebody else coined it as well, but I feel like I told Pjae, I'm taking new thought to the streets. And you know,
Taking it to the street.
and I like that, so I'm starting to use it. But I'm taking new thoughts to the streets with the unhoused. And some of them are gay, y'all, and some of them are straight, and some of them bi, some of them are all different colors. And some of them are on drugs and some of them are not. But I love every single one of them. And I hug them and I tell them they're capable of mastering their life. And I've seen, point in case, there was a young 20-something husband and wife, and they had a cat, and they used to be behind the old building on Utah in San Francisco. And I would go see them and I would share these things with them. And one day I showed up and they weren't there. And I went looking for them. I couldn't find them. And I got a phone call 3 days later. And they said, because of the way that I had spoken to them, like, you know, get up, y'all, come on. And let's see, why are we here? And they have 3 little children that were living with the grandparents. And they told me, we would rather be here living this way than have our children right now, because the drug is more important to us. That broke my heart.
Wow.
And I'm like, am I even making a difference out here? You know? And a couple of weeks later, they were gone, but they called me. They got a mobile home, they got a job, and there goes my job. And they got their children back. And they changed their life. And y'all, they joined a church. And I don't know what kind, they just said they joined a church and they appreciated what I did for them. It doesn't matter. Anytime you're getting spirit, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. The right. You have a couple of people waiting to ask you a question or make a comment. So Bill, what's your thoughts?
I love the work that you're doing, Brock, so tremendously important. And, you know, it's transformational. You get one-on-one and you get in front of mom and you say, this is your baby, and help her remember who she is. And remember the truth that's there. That one-on-one transformation is huge. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's what I call scriptural bludgeoning, where somebody will take something out of scripture and use this to prove that somebody else is wrong. And then they'll put those words into mom's mouth and insist that that's the truth so that she forgets who she is.
Right.
And one of the techniques that I love to do with that is to just slow the conversation way down. Because what I found is people say, well, here's the scripture, and you start talking about it, and they give, here's another scripture, and then here's another one. Like they're coming up with more and more. I said, let's just do one at a time. Let's go. Which version of the Bible are you reading from? And if they're in the new version, then you could say, let's see the same thing in the old version. Because a lot of times when you read through it, the different versions of the Bible don't agree. So you say, well, maybe it doesn't mean what you say it means, because you could read 2 different versions and it means something different. And oh, by the way, let's read a few verses before and a few verses after.
How about that?
What you think they're talking about might not be what they're talking about. Sure. And to slow the process down and just to leave open the possibility that it doesn't mean what they say it means. And it certainly might not mean what they say it means from 2,000 or 6,000 years ago.
That is an excellent. That's an excellent.
It is true. And Bill, thank you for that. That's what this next workshop is sort of about. And going back and doing the research, I learned so much, because there are so many different translations of one single word, you know. And so I'm utilizing that exact process that you just said to be able to combat it, or at least help people understand and grow. So
thank you so much, Bill. Celeste Turkin, you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I don't have any questions, Brock, so you can kind of rest. I just have some comments. Because I live in Florida. So, and I have a gay cousin who's been gay for many years, and his cousins are all pretty much accepting of him, and the generation that had problems has died out. So that's been resolved easily. And the interesting thing about the the evangelistic types that are trying to censor the books in the libraries really are not thinking of how the consciousness of teenagers work. There is nothing that will get them to read a book faster than having it banned.
Exactly.
If you want to stop them from reading it, you have to make it required reading.
That's true.
Very good, Celeste.
And there's a rabbi in Florida who's working to get the Bibles taken out of schools,
Mhm.
school libraries, because he says the pornography, the decadence,
Oh, that's fun.
everything that's in the Bible, it's nothing for children, not to mention that they won't understand about 3/4 of the words. But
Thank you.
I said, it has no place. And like I say, you know, telling kids to stay away from it makes it, you know, forbidden fruit that's so
Absolutely.
attracted to.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
And,
Celeste.
We have a couple more questions. Go ahead, Celeste. You haven't finished up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there was one more thing, you know, when people ask about my particular standing or my center's particular standing on the whole issue of sexuality, I said, we are concerned with your consciousness, not your crotch.
Mm.
Love it. Thanks, Celeste. Sherry, you have your hand up for a while.
Yes, and Brock and I have talked about this a little bit before, but I want to mention it because it's a big issue. I'm taking a racial equity class. If you want to give yourself a real kick in the butt, take a racial equity class. And one of the terms I have just learned is intersectionality.
Okay.
And what that means is that you can be the object of prejudice in more than one way at the same time. For
Sure.
instance, Brock has a new church, which is primarily, the people in that church are primarily Black. And I'll bet you nickels, some of them are also gay. So those people are getting it from two directions. And if one of them's a woman, holy cow, that's three. You know, so this is a really big thing. And I'm proud of Brock because it's very easy. I know for me personally, it's very easy to say, holy shit, what on earth can I do about it? This is way bigger than I am. And he said, okay, fine, but I'm going to chew this corner till it falls off.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you,
Thank
Sherry.
you, Sherry.
Reverend Jeff, you have your hand up.
Yes, I've been sitting here listening, and it's amazing to me. First of all, Brock and I have led kind of sort of similar lives. I was not brought up Southern Baptist, but the closest I came to being brought up in a church was when summer rolled around and my mom took us to vacation Bible school at the local United Methodist Church. But I got to be friends when I was in high school with a bunch of kids who were looked down on in our town because they were mixed race. There were very few Black families in our town, but we did have a Black minister who ministered to mostly mixed race people. And I started hanging out with them, and my mom threw a fit because, you know, you're supposed to be polite to everybody. You're supposed to be respectful, but those are not the type of people we mix with. That was number one. Number two, Reverend Peoples not only was Black, but he was rather flamboyant. He was rumored to be gay. I don't know that he was. He may not have been. He may just have been a bit more effusive in the way that he carried himself. He's passed now, but I spoke at his church on several occasions. I visited him and held prayer with him in the hospital when he was dying. He was my friend.
Yeah.
And to be told, and my mom and I used to clash over my going because I would sneak up on the hill on the ridge above town where Reverend Peoples had his church, behind her back. And then she'd find out about it. And then I found people who were into the Pentecostal movement and don't think that didn't set her off. Oh, we don't believe like that. I think she was scared mostly of those physical, what they call outpourings, gifts of the Spirit. And like I said, we clashed on several occasions. My dad came to me and he said, look, you're going to do what you're going to do. And he said, it's okay. Do what you're going to do. He said, but can you at least stop fighting with your mother about it? He said, just agree with her, nod your head, and go on and do it. And he said, just keep the peace. It wasn't until the end of her life that I finally understood that lesson my dad was trying to teach me. Because when I moved from West Virginia to Tennessee, and honey, I was like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire with some of the stuff going on down here. She and I were still not seeing eye to eye over the fact when she found out that I was gay. That just was like the top of everything. And my aunt told her, she said, now look, Jeff's not going to be living 20 miles away from you anymore. He's not going to be here to see you every weekend or every other weekend. You're not going to see him very often at all. You'll just be talking to him on the phone and probably not very much then because of the way that you've treated him. Give her respect, Mama. She tried.
Yeah.
And toward the end of her life, she came around.
Excellent.
So to see all of this, the parallels and how I fit in with the people that you have been working with, Rob, it's just incredible to me. So
Thank
I'm
you.
just so happy to be a New Thought minister and be accepted for who I am and for those that I minister to as well. So thank you for.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've got just a few more minutes. So Robert, if you can be quickly, we can get this going. We got like 3 minutes. Go ahead, Robert.
I just wanted to ask Brock real quickly where we might bask in his brilliance on a more regular basis, say like Thursday afternoons.
Well, thank you, Robert,
yes.
for bringing that up. How about something like 3:00 California time? New Thought Media Network, ntmedia.org, Spiritual Toolkit Show. Is that what you're talking about?
Huh. Imagine.
That sounds like fun.
That sounds
Okay.
like fun. Sounds like fun.
Well,
I think we can all go there.
Y'all go to Robert's newthoughtmedianetwork.org and check it out. There's lots of shows on there if you haven't seen them. And I've got my new show. This will be our second week coming up.
All right. Thank you all so much. We are running out of time, Brock. Thank you so much. I think the salient point that you talked about was do what you can where you are. And I love that. Thank you.
Y'all, the last thing I can leave you with really quick, be
Yes.
open, do what you can, and show someone that you love them. That's all that's needed.
Thank you. And that is absolutely New Thought Principles. Thank you. Thank you all. Let me just remind you really quickly, please do register for TLT on Anton's website and get up.
You got muted, PJ.
Did you guys? Okay. So register for TLT on Anton's website. Our upcoming speaker for July is Celeste Fraser. She's going to be talking about the power of visioning. The Gather and Gab has moved to Saturdays at noon and starts July 8th. So if you're going to do that, be sure and
Noon
check-
Central Time.
Oh, right. Noon. Thank you.
Noon for you.
Noon Central Time. Noon for me. It's all about me. So the Parliament of World Religions is happening in August. Our wonderful Anton retreat is happening in October. So please sign up. And our second Anton book is in the works. So please do sign up on the website. Any other things that we need to know? Anybody? Any thoughts?
Just
All
the
right.
the deadline for, if you're a member, please, I know we all have transformational stories that we could write about for Anton's next book. The deadline for getting that in is now. Actually, it's September 1st, but please submit now. Thanks to those of you who have. We've gathered a lot, but not enough for a book yet. So
Okay.
please get
And
on
we
the
do it on the
website.
website, right? Get on the website and do that. All right. Thank you. What you got? Reverend Steve, what do you got for us?
I decided to do a whole breakfast.
Yowza.
Oh
Woohoo!
my
Champagne
goodness.
as well. Lovely.
Oh.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Reverend Albert.